Why did everyone look past her like she didn't exist? Every morning at Naval Base Coronado, that question lingered in the air, unspoken but heavy enough to feel. Dawn broke like clockwork across the base, washing the steel and glass in gold. The rhythm of boots hitting pavement was sharp, precise, and unrelenting. Orders echoed off the walls. Discipline breathed in every corridor. And yet down the main hall, a woman pushed a mop. Her sleeves were rolled to her elbows. Her movements measured, steady, efficient. She wasn't part of the rhythm. She was background to it. The kind of person people noticed only when she wasn't there. The janitor. No rank, no salute, no name on the wall. Just the faint squeak of the mop bucket's wheels and the soft whisper of water sliding over polished floors. Two cadets passed her, their voices hushed but careless. "Did you know she failed out of Bud S?" one muttered. The other laughed. "Figures, she's lucky they let her stay on base at all." She didn't look up, not once. Years of discipline had taught her that silence could say more than any defense. Her eyes stayed low, her breathing calm. Then suddenly, a sound cut through the sterile quiet. "Mom!" A small boy came running down the hall, backpack bouncing, sneakers squealing, a bright smile breaking the gray morning in half. The woman dropped the mop handle, crouched, and opened her arms. The boy collided into her chest, laughing breathlessly. For a second, that hallway built on hierarchy softened. The base, the ranks, the whispered rumors, all of it faded into something warmer. They had no idea who that woman once was. But they were about to find out. Because some legends don't wear uniforms anymore. Some carry lunchboxes. The cafeteria that morning buzzed with the familiar hum of routine. Forks clinked against metal trays. Conversations rose and fell in waves, talk of missions, deployments, leave schedules. The scent of polished brass and brewed coffee hung heavy in the air. Every table had a story, every stripe a memory. At the far corner, away from the chatter, she sat. Maria Lawson. No one here called her captain anymore. Her uniform now was a plain navy work shirt with rolled sleeves, her name stitched faintly above the pocket. Her hair tied back, her posture still straight, precise, unshaken. Across from her sat her 8-year-old son, Lucas. His lunchbox was open, his little hands gripping a sandwich she'd made that morning before the base had even stirred. The two of them spoke quietly, sharing apple slices, a joke or two, the kind of small moments people overlook until they realize they're the best ones. "Mom," Lucas said between bites, "yours are way better than the cafeteria ones." Maria smiled softly. "That's because cafeteria food doesn't come with a mission briefing." He laughed, almost choking on his sandwich. Around them a few heads turned, some out of curiosity, others out of judgment. A group of young recruits at a nearby table whispered under their breath. "Isn't that the janitor?" "Yeah, brings her kid every day. Probably washed out years ago. Guess she wasn't good enough to stay in uniform." Their laughter wasn't loud, but it was enough to sting. Maria didn't react. Her hand moved slowly, slicing another piece of apple. Her face was composed, her voice quiet when she finally spoke. "Always remember this, kid," she said, handing him the slice. "Respect isn't about who talks loudest or who wears the stripes. It's about who stands tall when no one's watching." Lucas nodded, the way a child tries to act grown. His eyes, though, flickered. He understood more than she wanted him to. From across the room, Admiral Rebecca Stone noticed them. Stone was in her late 40s, sharp-eyed, calm, the kind of leader who didn't need to shout. Her uniform was perfect, her ribbons aligned. Yet her gaze wasn't on the brass around her. It was on the janitor in the corner, on her posture, her composure, the way she moved. There was something familiar, something trained, controlled. Stone frowned slightly, her mind flicking through old names, old files, old missions. There was a memory there, but it wouldn't surface. Not yet. The cafeteria doors burst open then. The shift in energy was instant. Admiral Thomas Grant strode in, metals catching the light, voice booming. He filled the room like he owned it. "Gentlemen," he called out, "I hope no one's eating like civilians today." Laughter rippled through the tables. He thrived on it, the noise, the rank, the power. And then he saw her. "Well, look at that," he said, smirking. "The Navy's finest janitorial division." A few nervous chuckles followed. One of his aides murmured, "She's here every day, sir, brings her kid." Grant grinned wider. "Of course she does. Someone's got to clean up after the real sailors." Maria didn't look up, but Lucas did. His small shoulders tightened, his little jaw clenched. He didn't understand rank or politics, just right and wrong. Grant moved on, oblivious. But Admiral Stone had seen enough. Her gaze lingered on Maria, on the scar running along the woman's forearm, thin, pale, surgical. Not a clumsy wound, a field scar. Stone's brow furrowed. She'd seen that kind before. Not on janitors, on operators. Maria wiped her son's mouth gently with a napkin. "You okay?" Lucas nodded. "They shouldn't talk to you like that," he said quietly. Maria smiled faintly. "You let words roll off, son. People show who they are when they think you're beneath them." "But you're not beneath them," he said, frowning. Her eyes softened. "Doesn't matter if they see it, I know who I am." Across the room, Stone's hand tightened around her coffee cup. She couldn't shake the sense that she was looking at someone she should know. Someone who'd done something impossible. But when she tried to recall, the memory just stayed buried, sealed behind clearance codes and redacted reports. That night the base quieted. Lights dimmed, engines stilled, the ocean hummed against the shore. Maria sat by her small kitchen window, watching the harbor lights blink in the dark. Her hands steady, precise, cleaned her son's lunchbox, folded his clothes, prepared for another day. A photo sat on the table beside her coffee mug. Faded edges, black and white uniforms, a group of SEALs standing shoulder to shoulder in sandstorm light. The one in the center wasn't smiling, but her eyes were fierce, focused, determined. Maria turned the photo face down. She buried that life a long time ago, or tried to. But peace isn't silence. Sometimes it's just a truce with the past. The next day, the same rhythm returned, orders, footsteps, routines. Maria walked the corridors, mop in hand, unnoticed as ever. Until by the lockers near the SEAL training wing, she heard laughter. A cluster of young trainees leaned against the metal doors, fresh from drills, full of adrenaline and ego. "Careful there, ma'am," one of them called mockingly. "Missed a spot. Can't have the floors dirty for inspection." Laughter followed. Maria said nothing. The mop glided smoothly across the tile. Water, light, reflection. Then her sleeve slipped again, just slightly. The scar caught the light. One of the trainees, tall, quiet, eyes a little older than the rest, stopped laughing. He knew that kind of scar. His father carried one from Kandahar. Surgical, clean, field-treated. Their eyes met. Maria gave a small nod. Not a greeting, not apology, recognition. The boy looked away, standing straighter. The laughter died, replaced by something heavier, respect maybe, or realization. The squeak of her mop echoed down the hall again, steady, unhurried. That afternoon, Maria took her son to the small playground behind the family quarters. The ocean stretched beyond the fence, sunlight dancing across the waves. Lucas ran across the sand, chasing his reflection in the metallic glint of the sea. Two Navy wives sat nearby, their voices soft but sharp enough to cut. "That's her kid," one said. "Poor thing, I heard she failed out of the Navy. Probably tough enough to scrub the whole base with her bare hands." Maria heard every word, she always did, but her gaze never left Lucas. His laughter, bright and unguarded, drowned out the noise. Then another boy approached Lucas near the swings. "My dad says your mom's a janitor," he said bluntly. "He said people who clean floors failed in the Navy." Lucas froze. For a second the world went quiet. Then he straightened his little back and said, firm as a salute, My mom didn't fail anything. She just doesn't need to prove it anymore." The boy blinked and walked off. Lucas turned toward his mother, searching her face. Maria's eyes met his, calm, steady, proud. When he came running to her, she knelt, brushed the dust from his sleeves, and whispered, "People only repeat what they hear, but we live what we know." He frowned. "It's not fair." "No," she said softly. "It's not. But fairness isn't the point, Lucas. We serve in different ways, remember that." From the fence line, Admiral Rebecca Stone watched again, this time not as a commander, but as a woman realizing what quiet strength really looks like. The janitor with the scar, laughing softly with her son, carried herself with the poise of someone who'd led soldiers through chaos and come home alive. Stone had seen courage, she'd seen leadership, but never like this, never in someone holding a lunchbox instead of a rifle. The wind off the ocean carried the faint echo of distant training shouts, and somewhere in that sound, Stone felt something stir. Not recognition, not yet, just respect. And she didn't even know why. What happens when respect walks into a room and no one recognizes it? That question hung heavy in the air of the Coronado cafeteria the next day. The lunch rush thundered like a heartbeat, boots striking tile, trays clattering, voices weaving together into a storm of chatter. Rank defined where people sat, whose stories were heard, whose laughter mattered. At the far back corner, Maria Lawson sat as she always did, her son across from her, small and intent on drawing airplanes on a napkin with a cheap blue pen. His brow furrowed the same way hers used to when planning a mission, focused, patient, quietly determined. To Lucas, this corner of the cafeteria wasn't lonely. It was theirs. To everyone else, it was invisible. Maria sipped her coffee, letting the noise around her fade into background static. Her mind moved like a tide restless beneath a calm surface. She learned how to breathe through noise, how to find stillness in chaos. That skill had saved lives once. Now it simply kept her steady. Across the room, Admiral Rebecca Stone entered with her staff. Her uniform was immaculate as always, ribbons sharp, shoes shining, but her eyes moved differently today. They scanned faces, corners, searching. For her, something about the janitor with the scar hadn't stopped echoing since yesterday. She saw Maria again, sitting with her son. Calm, measured, composed, the way she cut the apple slices in half with careful precision. The subtle discipline in how she moved her hands, the quiet authority in how she sat. It wasn't arrogance, it was training. It was memory made muscle. Before she could approach, the double doors slammed open with authority. Admiral Thomas Grant had arrived. You could feel him before you saw him, the air tightening, the energy shifting. He was tall, broad, silver-haired, the kind of man whose presence filled space like an uninvited storm. His laughter was loud enough to drown thought. "Gentlemen," he boomed, striding in with his entourage of junior officers. "Hope no one here's forgotten what a real Navy breakfast looks like." Laughter followed, obedient and forced. He loved this, the show of power, the attention, the hierarchy. It fed him. And then his eyes found Maria. He slowed, smirk curling like a weapon. "Well, would you look at that," he said. "Our janitorial division is keeping up appearances." His aides gave small, nervous laughs. One muttered, "She's here every day, sir. Brings her boy." Grant leaned on a table, eyes gleaming with condescension. "Of course she does. Can't blame her. Someone got to clean up after the real sailors." Maria didn't look up. Her movement stayed calm, folding a napkin, cutting another slice of apple, placing it in front of her son. But her silence, it carried weight, the kind of silence that draws attention without asking for it. Lucas froze, his little jaw tightening, his hands fisted around the sandwich he held. The cafeteria noise dimmed slightly, a shift no one spoke about but everyone felt. Admiral Stone's eyes hardened. She watched from across the room, her instincts flaring. This wasn't banter, this was humiliation. She took a step forward but stopped. Something told her not to interfere. Not yet. Maria finally looked up, not at Grant, at Lucas. Her voice was soft, almost conversational. "My son's eating," she said. "Let's keep it respectful." Grant chuckled, savoring the attention. "Relax, Janitor, we're just having fun." He took a step closer, tone dripping mockery. "Tell me what's your call sign. Mop Queen, Commander Scrub." The laughter that followed wasn't genuine. It was nervous, uneasy, the kind of laughter people use to hide guilt. Lucas looked around, wide-eyed. His throat worked, his small voice trembling. "Stop it," he whispered. "That's my mom." Maria's hand moved, slow, deliberate. She finished folding the napkin, placed it neatly beside her plate, and lifted her gaze. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but carried through the air like a bell in fog. "My call sign," she said evenly, "was Iron Sparrow." And then silence. It fell like a hammer. The laughter died mid-breath. Forks clattered against trays. The sound drained from the room until even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to fade. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then a whisper. "That's not possible." Grant blinked. "What did you just say?" Maria didn't repeat it. She didn't need to. Her eyes, calm, unflinching, certain, said everything. At the next table, a young sailor froze, his face pale. He'd heard that name before. Everyone had. In whispers. In barrack stories that started with, "You know, the one who led the impossible rescue." Iron Sparrow. The seal who vanished after Operation Tidal Spear. The legend no one could confirm existed. Grant's grin faltered. The confidence drained from his face, replaced by something rare for him, confusion. "Cute story," he muttered, "but Iron Sparrow was a man." Across the cafeteria, Admiral Stone stopped breathing. The world seemed to tilt. The classified mission files, the redacted reports, the scar, the posture, the silence. It all collided in her mind with devastating clarity. Iron Sparrow. Maria Lawson. The janitor. The room held its breath. Maria reached across the table, adjusted the straw in her son's juice box, and said softly, "Eat your lunch, Lucas." No one spoke, no one dared. Because suddenly, everyone knew. The quiet woman they'd ignored wasn't a failed recruit or a janitor who'd washed out. She was the ghost of a legend who'd done the impossible and disappeared without a trace. A voice broke the stillness. "She's not lying, sir." Every head turned. The speaker, a SEAL instructor, broad-shouldered, scarred, and certain, stood slowly from his seat. His name tag read Hughes. His voice was low but steady. "We trained on her mission at the Academy. Operation Tidal Spear. Rescue of the 44th Marine Recon. After-action report listed one surviving operator. Call sign, Iron Sparrow." He paused, looking at Maria, his tone softening. "We thought you were gone." Silence thickened, heavy with realization. Then another man stood, a petty officer, then a corpsman, then a pilot from across the room. One by one they rose, not on command, not out of duty, but out of something older. Respect. Their hands lifted to their brows, the motion uneven, human, full of awe. Not the sharp, rehearsed salute of ceremony. A real one, the kind built on shame and reverence. Maria didn't return it. She didn't need to. She just stood still, letting the silence speak for her. Lucas looked around, his little voice breaking the moment. "Mom," he whispered, "you're Iron Sparrow." She knelt, her knees creaking softly, her voice gentle. "I was," she said, "a long time ago." She brushed his hair back, smiling faintly. "Now I'm just your mom. That's the only rank I care about." The room didn't move. Even Grant, pale, silent, hands trembling slightly, couldn't find his words. He'd mocked her, publicly, and now the truth stood before him, calm and unshaken. Admiral Stone stepped forward finally. Every boot in the room shifted toward her instinctively. Her face was unreadable, but her voice trembled with controlled emotion. "Captain Lawson," she said quietly, using the rank with deliberate weight, "the Navy owes you more than it can repay." Maria's answer was calm, almost kind. "No, Admiral, I owe the Navy nothing. I did my part. Now I'm doing what matters." Stone followed her gaze toward Lucas and understood. "He's why you left," she said softly. Maria nodded once. He needed a mother more than the Navy needed a weapon. The words sliced through the tension like a clean cut. Simple, true, final. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then slowly, reverently, the sound of quiet applause began, not for a speech, not for a medal, but for the truth. Admiral Stone lowered her head, not out of shame but respect. Admiral Grant, however, could barely stand. His tray cracked under the pressure of his grip. His voice came out broken. "You disappeared." Maria looked at him, no anger, no pride, just clarity. "Some people get to retire quietly," she said. "Some of us have to disappear to find peace." Stone's eyes glistened. She raised her hand in salute, sharp and deliberate. "Welcome home, Iron Sparrow." Maria hesitated, then returned the salute, not as a janitor, not as a legend, as a soldier acknowledging another. The cafeteria exhaled, the spell broke. Conversations resumed in whispers, but the tone was different now, not gossip, reverence. Grant stood frozen, unable to process the reality. The woman he mocked now commanded the room without a uniform, without a word of anger, just by existing. Lucas tugged on her hand. "Does this mean you're going back, Mom?" She shook her head gently. "No, son, it means they finally caught up." The crowd parted as she walked toward the exit, her son's small hand in hers. Every step echoed against the tile, a rhythm steady and unhurried, the walk of someone who no longer had anything to prove. By evening, the story had spread through every corridor. The base that once laughed at the janitor now whispered her name like a prayer. Iron Sparrow. That night Admiral Stone sat in her office, staring at a classified folder she hadn't opened in years. Operation Tidal Spear. Redacted lines. Names blacked out. But one word still visible near the top. Iron Sparrow status unknown. She closed the file slowly, her jaw tight. The Navy had buried her, but legends don't stay buried. They just wait until the world needs to remember. Outside, down the dimly lit corridors, Maria Lawson pushed her cleaning cart again, same rhythm, same silence. But now every head she passed turned slightly, not to mock, to watch, to wonder. Respect had returned, quietly. And though she didn't show it, somewhere deep inside, Maria felt it too, that fragile, rare thing she'd thought she'd lost forever. Peace. How do you look a legend in the eye when you've spent your life mocking ghosts? Admiral Thomas Grant didn't know the answer. Not yet. But it would come for him the way truth always does, quietly, without mercy. Morning light bled across the Coronado tarmac, turning the ocean mist into silver haze. The base carried on as though nothing had happened, but everyone knew something had shifted. The air felt different now. Calmer. Sharper. Maria Lawson pushed her cleaning cart through the same corridor she'd always walked, yet this time, footsteps slowed as she passed. Voices hushed. Doors that once closed stayed slightly ajar in a silent gesture of respect. Someone had placed a small bouquet of wildflowers on her cart that morning, tied together with a ration pack ribbon. No note, no name, just a quiet offering. She touched it briefly, smiled faintly, and kept walking. Across the compound, Admiral Rebecca Stone watched from her office window, the sunlight glinting off her cup of black coffee. She didn't know what drove her to watch, but she did. Every morning now. There was something grounding about Maria's calmness, something she hadn't felt in years. Stone turned toward her desk. Spread across it were old files, sealed reports, and one folder she'd never thought she'd open again. Operation Tidal Spear. The ink was faded. The words "classified, do not reproduce" stamped in red across the header. She ran her thumb along the edge before flipping it open. Inside, the mission briefings read like a dirge: Somalia, hostile territory, 44th Marine Recon pinned, 18 hours under fire, rescue deemed impossible. Then one addendum: SEAL Team Shadow, Operative Iron Sparrow assumed command after unit leader KIA. Extraction successful, estimated 14 lives saved. And then the final line: operative status, missing in action, presumed deceased. Stone's breath caught. The handwriting in the margin, her own. She remembered that debrief years ago. A young officer, trembling, said only one thing when asked who led them out. I never saw her face, just heard her voice. A voice calm under fire, a woman's voice. Stone leaned back, hands trembling slightly. She buried that memory like the rest of the Navy had. But Maria Lawson, Iron Sparrow, she hadn't disappeared. She just stopped waiting for recognition. Across the base, Admiral Grant sat in his office, blinds drawn, the air stale with guilt and old arrogance. The silence pressed against him. Every sound from the corridor outside, footsteps, laughter, routine, felt like an accusation. On his desk sat an untouched tray of food and a pile of reports he couldn't focus on. The reflection in his coffee cup looked back at him, older, smaller, uncertain. He opened his terminal. His hand hovered over the keyboard. Then, quietly, he typed into the restricted system. Operation Title Spear, Archive Access Request. The screen flashed, clearance denied. He entered his override. He still had enough rank to break through. The folder opened. Dozens of files appeared, audio logs, photos, and one grainy video feed marked Helmet Cam 3, Iron Sparrow. He clicked it. The footage flickered alive with static. The screen shook violently, dust, smoke, tracer fire slicing through the air. Shouts over comms. A soldier's voice screaming coordinates. Another calling for medevac. Then a figure. Smaller than the others. Swift, purposeful, moving through chaos with impossible control. The camera caught glimpses. Hands dragging a wounded Marine across the sand, bullets kicking dirt inches from her boots. Her voice came through the static, steady, clear. Copy, Iron Sparrow en route, keep your heads down. Grant froze. That voice calm, unshaken, it didn't belong to a myth. It belonged to her. He scrubbed forward. The camera shook again, catching her silhouette against an explosion. She shielded the Marine's body with her own. Dust swallowed the frame. When it cleared, she was already back on her feet, dragging another man to safety. Then her face, just for a moment, covered in grime, streaked with sweat, eyes blazing with something he couldn't name. Not anger, not fear. Resolve. His breath caught. The insignia on the wounded Marine's uniform, his brother's unit patch. The date in the corner of the footage matched the day his brother's platoon had survived against all odds. The day he'd told himself it was luck. It wasn't luck, it was her. Grant's throat tightened. He froze the frame on her face, Maria Lawson, battle-worn, focused, alive. He'd mocked that woman, laughed at her, diminished her in front of her son. The weight of it hit him like a wave. His hand trembled as he pressed pause. The word Iron Sparrow blinked in the corner of the screen like a heartbeat. He leaned back in his chair, eyes burning. The medals on his chest felt heavier than they ever had, meaningless, plastic against the weight of her silence. For a long time he didn't move. Then quietly, almost as a prayer, he whispered, "Thank you." The next morning the sun rose soft and gold over the parade grounds. The flag stirred lazily in the ocean breeze. Sailors marched, formations aligned, the rhythm of duty undisturbed, but under the surface something deeper had taken hold. In the cafeteria, where laughter once cut, now only whispers passed. Respectful, quiet. A few chairs remained deliberately empty, symbolic gestures in a place that once mocked the wrong people. Maria walked through the corridor, her cart rolling steady. The echo of boots didn't drown her anymore. It harmonized. She stopped by a vending machine, coins clinking softly. A sailor nearby stepped aside, holding the door for her. "Morning, ma'am," he said. No sarcasm, just sincerity. Maria gave a small nod. "Morning, sailor." She didn't need their apologies, not their admiration either. She learned long ago that dignity doesn't beg to be seen. It simply exists. At the far end of the hall, Admiral Stone approached, 2 coffees in hand. "I wasn't sure how you take it," she said, offering one out. "So I guessed black." Maria smiled faintly. "That's the only way it should be." They stood in silence for a moment, the morning hum of the bass drifting around them. 2 women bound by unspoken understanding. Both soldiers, both survivors, both tired of pretending strength had to roar to be real. "You walked away from command," Stone said finally, "for your son." Maria looked down at her coffee, the steam curling softly between them. "I didn't walk away," she said. "I came home." Stone's jaw tightened. She understood that in a way most wouldn't. "Most of us don't know when to stop fighting," she murmured. "You did." Maria's eyes softened. Some wars aren't meant to be won, just survived. Stone watched her for a long moment, the stillness, the calm, the quiet authority, and she realized something that made her chest tighten. She'd spent her entire career trying to become Iron Sparrow. And all along, Iron Sparrow had been mopping her floors. That afternoon, Admiral Grant walked across the base courtyard alone, his uniform immaculate, his face drawn and pale. He passed groups of sailors who looked away awkwardly, unsure whether to salute or stay silent. He didn't care. He stopped outside the maintenance wing, where Maria was cleaning the hallway near the window. She didn't look up immediately, but she knew he was there. He cleared his throat. "Captain Lawson." Her mop paused. "Admiral Grant." For a moment neither spoke. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the space between them. Then he said quietly, "I saw the footage." Maria's expression didn't change. "You shouldn't have." "I had to," his voice cracked. "My brother, he was in that platoon." She looked up, eyes steady. "I remember, he was brave." Grant swallowed hard. "I didn't know I didn't," he stopped. His throat closed on the words. The man who commanded hundreds couldn't finish one sentence. "I'm sorry." Maria nodded once. No anger, no pity, just acknowledgement. "Some lessons take time, Admiral," she said softly. "The important thing is you learned them." He blinked, tears threatening, but she turned away before he could see them. As he left, the sound of the mop resumed, slow, deliberate, unhurried. That night the Pacific glowed beneath a burning orange sky. Maria and Lucas sat on the seawall outside their quarters, legs dangling over the edge, watching waves crash against the rocks below. Lucas folded a paper boat from a napkin and set it gently in the water. "Mom," he asked quietly, "do you miss it?" She followed the boat with her eyes as it drifted toward the horizon. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Sometimes I miss the mission, the noise, the feeling that what I did mattered." "Then why'd you leave?" Maria's gaze softened. "Because I found something that mattered more." He tilted his head, waiting. She smiled faintly. "The hardest battles aren't out there," she said, nodding toward the ocean. "They're here. The kind where you show up every day, even when you're tired, where no one gives you medals for doing the right thing, the kind where you love someone enough to stay." Lucas leaned against her shoulder. "So this is your mission now?" "This," she said, wrapping an arm around him, "is my mission, and it's the one I plan to win." The camera of the mind pulls back, the sea stretching endless before them, the base glowing faintly behind. The horizon calm, earned. Peace doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives quietly in laughter, in sunsets, in a child's trust. Maria Lawson, Iron Sparrow, sat watching the water carry the paper boat away, her eyes soft with the kind of strength that no war could break. She didn't need the world to remember her name. She just needed her son to know who she was. And for the first time in years, that was enough. How do you honor someone who never asked for it? That was the question Admiral Rebecca Stone asked herself as the morning sun rose over Naval Base Coronado. The flag caught the early wind like a breath held too long, and hundreds of sailors stood in perfect formation across the parade ground. Their boots gleamed, their faces solemn. They didn't know every detail, but they knew enough. Today wasn't just another briefing. The air shimmered with anticipation, that quiet electricity before truth is spoken out loud. At the front of the courtyard, a single podium waited. Beside it stood Admiral Stone, composed as ever, though her fingers tightened once around the paper in her hands before she exhaled and let it go. She wouldn't read from notes today. This wasn't protocol. It was something closer to confession. Down the walkway, Maria Lawson walked with her son, Lucas. She wore her same faded navy work shirt, the sleeves rolled neatly to her elbows, the faint scar along her forearm catching a flash of light. Her posture was as it had always been, straight, steady, unshaken. Lucas held her hand tightly, eyes darting from the rows of uniforms to the stage ahead. "Mom," he whispered, "why's everyone here?" She gave a small shrug. "Probably a briefing," she said lightly, though her stomach tightened with the sense that something bigger was unfolding. As they reached the edge of the courtyard, the murmurs began, small at first, then swelling softly. Someone recognized her. Someone else turned to look. The ripple moved outward like a wave through the crowd. Stone stepped to the microphone. "Good morning," she began, her voice carrying over the stillness. "Today we gather not for rank, not for medals, but for something far rarer, a reminder of what honor truly looks like when no one is watching." Maria froze. Lucas tugged her sleeve again, eyes wide. "They're talking about you," he whispered. Stone continued, gaze sweeping the formation. "We wear uniforms that mark our service, but there are those who continue to serve long after the uniform is gone. Those who remind us that humility is not weakness, and silence can be the loudest form of courage." A hush spread across the courtyard. Stone nodded toward the walkway. "Captain Maria Lawson," she said, voice steady but reverent, "would you please join us?" For a moment, Maria didn't move. Every instinct in her screamed to stay invisible, to fade back into the crowd like she'd done for years. But Lucas tugged her hand again, beaming. "Go on, Mom," he said softly. "They're waiting." She swallowed hard, then began to walk. Each step echoed against the concrete like a heartbeat. The sailors parted instinctively, clearing a path toward the stage. The flag rippled behind her, catching gold in the rising light. Admiral Thomas Grant stood near the podium, his face pale, his posture rigid. He'd requested to speak. Stone had allowed it, on the condition that he spoke from the heart, not from a script. When Maria reached the front, she stopped a few paces from him, her eyes calm, his full of ghosts. Grant cleared his throat. For a man who once commanded attention effortlessly, the words came slowly now, heavy with shame. "Captain Lawson," he began, voice low, "I mocked you out of pride, out of ignorance." He paused, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "I didn't see the soldier standing in front of me. I saw a janitor, and I was wrong." The wind stirred faintly through the ranks. No one moved. "You reminded me," he continued, "what real leadership looks like. Not the kind pinned on a chest, but the kind that carries on in silence. The kind that doesn't need applause to matter." He stepped back, lifted his hand in a crisp salute. For one suspended second, the entire base seemed to stop breathing. Then slowly, the line of officers behind him followed. One by one, hundreds of sailors, marines, and aviators raised their right hands to their brows. It wasn't ceremony anymore. It was redemption. Maria stood frozen, the weight of it pressing down, years of invisibility, of whispered ridicule. now replaced by reverence so deep it almost hurt to bear. Lucas squeezed her hand, whispering, "Mom, they're saluting you." She knelt beside him, her voice barely above a breath. "No, sweetheart," she said, "they're saluting what matters." Stone stepped forward again, voice firm but trembling at the edges. "There are heroes we salute," she said, "and heroes we learn from. Captain Lawson taught us that medals fade but character never does." Applause broke, gentle at first, then rising like a tide. Not roaring, not chaotic, just real. The kind of sound that carries gratitude instead of noise. Lucas clapped until his small hands turned pink. "Go, Mom!" he shouted, grinning, his voice piercing through the solemn air and bringing warmth back into it. Laughter rippled lightly through the ranks, releasing the tension. Stone gestured toward the podium. "Captain, would you say a few words?" Maria hesitated. Crowds were never her battlefield, but something in the expectant silence, the hundreds of faces looking not for a hero but for guidance, moved her to step forward. She stood before the microphone, the flag rippling behind her. The sun flared off the metal insignia on the officers' chests, but she wasn't looking at them. She was looking at Lucas. Her voice, when it came, was calm and sure. "I'm not Iron Sparrow anymore," she began. "That part of me did what it had to do. It carried men through fire. It did its duty. But life has a way of giving you new missions." She looked at her son, then back to the crowd. "I'm still serving," she said softly. "Just in a different way. I'm a mother now, and raising one good man, that's the greatest mission I'll ever complete." The courtyard was silent. Then slowly applause built again, rolling like surf against the seawall, steady, sincere. Some clapped. Some simply stood straighter, eyes glistening. Even Grant, jaw tight but wet-eyed, joined in. Stone approached and extended her hand. "On behalf of the United States Navy," she said, her voice quiet but full, "thank you for reminding us who we're supposed to be." Maria shook her hand gently. "You don't need to thank me, Admiral," she said. "Just take care of the next generation. Make sure they never forget what this uniform means." Stone nodded. "They won't." The camera of the mind widens. The courtyard full of uniforms, the fluttering flag, the golden sunlight cascading down. In the center, Maria Lawson, once a ghost, now simply human again. Lucas turned up at her, eyes shining. "You did it, Mom," he said. Maria smiled, kneeling so her forehead met his. "No, kiddo, we did." The crowd's applause swelled once more as the flag waved high, and for a brief, perfect moment, peace settled over the base like sunlight breaking through fog. That evening, twilight painted the Pacific in soft crimson and violet. The ceremony's echoes still lingered. Cheers, salutes, 100 quiet goodbyes whispered by those too proud to say the words aloud. Inside a small base house near the docks, a warm light glowed through the window. The sound of laughter, of dishes clinking, of normalcy returned. At the wooden table, Maria sat with Lucas and Admiral Stone. The tension of rank was gone. What remained was humanity. 3 people sharing a meal, no titles needed. Stone leaned back in her chair, smiling faintly. "You cook as well as you lead," she said. Maria chuckled. "You learn fast when you're feeding a growing boy. The Navy taught me to improvise with rations. Motherhood gave me a better audience." Lucas grinned, fork raised. 10 out of 10, Admiral. Team Sparrow always eats good." Stone laughed, surprised by the boy's confidence. "Team Sparrow." "Yeah," Lucas said proudly. "That's me and Mom. We're like a unit." Maria shook her head, amused. "You give a kid one call sign and he makes it a brand." Laughter filled the kitchen, soft, real, unforced. For the first time in years, Maria let it stay. Later, when the plates were cleared and the house quieted, Stone lingered with her glass of water, her eyes distant. "You know," she said softly, "I lost my husband in Afghanistan 12 years ago. I told myself I stayed in uniform because he couldn't. But the truth is," she exhaled, "I was afraid to stop fighting. I didn't know who I was without the mission. Maria nodded slowly. I used to think the same, that if I wasn't in the fight I was failing someone. But peace isn't surrender, Rebecca, it's survival. It's what we fight for. Stone blinked, her composure faltering just a little. You found it, she said quietly. Peace. Maria looked toward the small hallway where Lucas's laughter drifted from his room. I did, she said, and it's louder than any gunfire I ever heard. Stone raised her glass. To peace. Maria clinked hers gently. To peace, she echoed, and to the ones who remind us why we fight for it. From down the hall, Lucas's voice piped up, half asleep but proud. And to Team Sparrow. They both laughed, soft, weary, full of something that felt like healing. When Stone finally left, Maria stood on the porch, the ocean breeze brushing against her hair. The lights of the base shimmered across the bay, quiet and constant. For the first time, the hum of jets and the crash of distant waves didn't sound like reminders of war. They sounded like life going on. Inside, Lucas's voice drifted through the thin walls. Good night, Mom. She smiled, whispering back, Good night, soldier. The night air was cool, the scent of salt heavy and familiar. She closed her eyes, feeling the world settle around her like an embrace. The war was long over. And for the first time, she believed it. What happens after the salute ends? After the applause fades, the uniforms straighten, and everyone goes back to their duties. What's left? At Naval Base Coronado, something invisible lingered. A quiet presence that changed how people walked, how they spoke. It wasn't fear, it wasn't even awe. It was awareness. Maria Lawson had returned to her routine, the mop bucket, the polished floors, the hum of distant engines. But now, every sound carried new weight. The sailors she passed didn't laugh anymore. They nodded. The ones who used to avoid her eyes now met them and held their gaze a second longer. The hallways she'd once drifted through unseen now opened for her, small gestures of respect in place of words. And though she'd never say it out loud, it humbled her. She didn't want worship, she wanted silence, peace, normalcy. But peace rarely arrives without a price. One morning, as she wheeled her cart past the command office, she heard footsteps behind her. Captain Lawson. It was Admiral Stone. Her voice always carried a certain precision, clipped, professional, but now it sounded softer, human. Maria stopped and turned. Admiral. Stone gestured toward the open door. Walk with me a minute. They stepped inside. The office smelled of salt and coffee and the faint tang of oiled metal. Papers covered the desk, deployment lists, maintenance reports, new training revisions. But one folder sat open at the top. Code of Conduct, Revision Draft. Maria raised an eyebrow. Stone smiled faintly. You started something, she said. I thought you should see what it looks like when it ripples upward. She slid the folder across the desk. Maria skimmed the lines, a proposal for leadership retraining, empathy inclusion, disciplinary reforms focused not on fear but integrity. You're rewriting the rules, Maria said. Stone leaned against the desk, arms crossed loosely. You reminded us that authority doesn't come from volume. It comes from example. I can't change what's been done, but I can change what comes next. Maria nodded, quiet admiration flickering in her eyes. Good, she said. That's where it starts. Stone hesitated, then asked, Do you ever think about coming back? Maria looked out the window, where Lucas ran across the distant school field, backpack bouncing, laughter carrying faintly on the wind. Every day, she admitted. But coming back means leaving something else behind. I've already traded enough pieces of myself. Stone nodded slowly. Fair, she smiled. He's lucky, you know, to have you. Maria's eyes softened. No, I'm the lucky one. Outside, the noon sun glared across the asphalt. The sound of training drills echoed the cadence calls, the rhythmic pounding of boots. And somewhere amid that rhythm, a new tone had formed. respectful, steadier. That same day, Admiral Thomas Grant sat in his office, the blinds half drawn, the light cutting sharp lines across his desk. The folder on his screen was still open, Operation Tidal Spear Video 3. He'd watched it every morning since the day he found it, every single morning. He wasn't sure why. Maybe to remember. Maybe to punish himself. He clicked the video again. The static roared, the sandstorm filled the frame, and the camera caught her Maria, dragging two Marines through gunfire. Her voice broke through the chaos. "Keep moving, we don't leave anyone behind." Grant leaned forward, his jaw trembling. He'd spent years believing leadership meant dominance, strength meant command. That voice, steady amid chaos, shattered that illusion. He paused the video on her face again, sweat, soot, blood, but calm, always calm. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I was wrong." A knock at the door startled him. "Enter," he said, his tone reflexively sharp. A young ensign stepped in. "Sir, I wanted to ask permission to post something." Grant frowned. "Post." The ensign held out a folded piece of paper. On it was a hand-drawn emblem, a small sparrow, wings outstretched, overlaying the Navy crest. Beneath it the words, "Honor is not what you wear, it's what you carry." Grant looked at it for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Post it," he said, "everywhere." When the ensign left, Grant stood, walking to the window. The courtyard shimmered under the sun. A janitor's cart moved slowly along the walkway below, small and steady. He saluted quietly, unseen, and turned away. That night the wind howled off the Pacific. Clouds rolled over the base, bringing the smell of rain and the low groan of waves crashing against the seawall. Maria stood outside, her jacket collar pulled tight, eyes on the horizon. She liked the storm, always had. There was honesty in it, the kind of chaos she understood. Behind her, Lucas's voice drifted through the door. "Mom, can I come out?" "Not tonight," she called back. "Storm's too strong." He appeared anyway, barefoot, carrying a flashlight. "I'm not scared." She smiled faintly. "That's not the point. You don't have to prove that you're brave." He looked up at her, hair whipping in the wind. "Is that what you used to do? Prove it." Her eyes softened. "I used to think so, but bravery isn't proving anything. It's knowing when to stand still." The thunder rolled above them. Maria knelt beside him, pointing toward the sky. "See that?" she said, as lightning cracked across the dark clouds. "That's power, uncontrolled, beautiful but dangerous. But the ocean," she gestured toward the waves crashing below, "the ocean endures it, always." Lucas followed her gaze, awe in his small face. "So you're the ocean," he said simply. Maria smiled, "Something like that." They stood there in silence, mother and son framed by the storm. For a brief, cinematic heartbeat, lightning illuminated the two of them. The woman who once carried war in her hands, and the boy who gave her reason to lay it down. The next morning the base was washed clean. Puddles shimmered on the pavement. The air smelled of salt and new beginnings. Maria walked to the memorial wall near the docks, a place she hadn't visited in years. The stone surface was cold beneath her fingertips. Names carved deep, names she remembered too well. She found the one that stopped her breathing. LT, Commander R. Blake, KIA, Operation Tidal Spear. She crouched, tracing the letters slowly. The man had been her commanding officer, the one who handed her the call sign. "You'll fly like a sparrow," he'd said once. "Small, fast, unstoppable." And she had, until the storm took him. Maria closed her eyes. The wind off the ocean whipped her hair. She didn't cry, she never did, but her hand trembled slightly against the stone. "I kept flying," she whispered, "just not the same way." Behind her, a quiet voice spoke. "I figured I'd find you here." It was Admiral Stone. She approached slowly, coffee cup in hand, her posture easy. She stood beside Maria, reading the names without speaking. I used to think these walls were about death, Stone said finally. But they're about memory, and sometimes memory hurts worse than any wound. Maria exhaled softly. It's supposed to. That's how we remember what it cost. Stone looked at her, admiration shadowed by sadness. Do you ever wish you could change it? Maria thought for a long moment. No, she said at last. You don't make peace by rewriting what happened. You make it by living with what didn't. Stone nodded slowly. You really are Iron Sparrow. Maria smiled faintly. Not anymore. I'm just someone who stopped fighting the wrong wars. They stood in silence, two soldiers staring at the reflection of their own ghosts on the wet stone. Later that day, as drills echoed across the base, Maria returned to her janitor's cart. The sound of mops, the rhythm of footsteps, the chatter of life. Nothing special, nothing dramatic. And yet in that quiet repetition there was peace. Admiral Grant walked by once, pausing at the corner. "Captain," he said softly. She looked up. He hesitated, then extended a hand. "For what it's worth," he said, "you reminded me what leadership is supposed to look like." She shook his hand firmly. "Then make it count," she said. He nodded, "I will." And for the first time his smile wasn't prideful, it was grateful. That night back home, Lucas sat at the table sketching on a pad, drawing planes again, though this time one was small, sleek, with a sparrow painted on the tail. "What's that?" Maria asked, leaning over. He grinned. "It's your new call sign, the Iron Sparrow too, but this time it's a rescue ship, not a fighter." Maria smiled. "Looks perfect." He tilted his head. "Do you think the Navy will remember you now?" She looked at him for a long time, then said softly, "I don't need them to, Lucas. You do, that's enough." Outside, the ocean roared softly against the rocks, not angry, not loud, just endless. Somewhere beyond that horizon, new wars waited, new storms gathered. But for once, Maria Lawson didn't feel pulled toward them. Her mission was here, in laughter, in peace, in one small boy who reminded her why survival mattered more than glory. And as the lights dimmed across Coronado, one quiet truth settled over the night like mist on the sea. Legends fade, but the ones who choose love over war, they never disappear. Some stories refuse to stay buried. No matter how quietly you live, how far you walk from the noise, they find you. It started small. A news blog, a photo someone posted after the ceremony, a janitor standing on the stage, sunlight on her face, an admiral saluting her. No caption, no title, just one line beneath it: "Sometimes heroes don't wear rank." By evening it had spread across defense circles. By morning it was everywhere. Maria Lawson's name, once erased, now whispered like a rumor turned revelation. Her past, once locked in sealed files, now threaded through military boards, veteran networks, podcasts, and late-night news segments. But she didn't see any of it at first. She was mopping the hangar floors when two sailors passed by, talking in hushed excitement. "You see that footage? They said it was her Iron Sparrow from Somalia." "No way, the janitor. That's impossible." "I don't know, man. Admiral Stone confirmed it herself." Maria didn't look up. She just kept mopping, the swish of water covering the tremor in her hand. That night as she walked home with Lucas, the base seemed quieter. Not the respectful quiet, something heavier. Curious eyes followed her now. People wanted to know her story. The peace she had fought for was already starting to fracture. Inside their small living room, Lucas sat on the couch, scrolling through his tablet. "Mom," he said, "why's your picture on the news?" Maria froze. On the screen, an image of her standing beside Admiral Stone, sunlight flaring across her hair. The headline beneath it read, "The Forgotten Hero of Operation Tidal Spear." She sat slowly beside him, taking the tablet from his hands. Her voice was calm, but her pulse pounded in her ears. "They weren't supposed to talk about that," she murmured. Lucas frowned. Aren't you happy they did? Everyone saying you saved people. She looked at him, that innocent pride shining in his eyes, and felt a strange ache. I'm happy they're alive, she said softly. That's enough. But deep inside, she knew this kind of attention never stayed gentle. The next morning, Admiral Stone's phone rang before dawn. She rubbed sleep from her eyes, answering on instinct. Stone. Rebecca, it's Grant. His voice was low, urgent. We've got a problem. Go ahead. The Pentagon saw the broadcast. They want clarification. They're asking why a classified operative was allowed to appear publicly. Stone exhaled. She didn't appear, we invited her. This was a human moment, not a political one. Tell that to the Defense Council, Grant muttered. They're calling it a breach. Some of them are demanding a statement. Stone pinched the bridge of her nose. A statement about what? That we honored someone we forgot to honor 15 years ago. You know how they are, Grant said grimly. They don't like ghosts coming back. Stone stood, walking to her window. The base was still dark, only the runway lights blinking faintly. If they want a statement, they'll get one, she said, but not the kind they're expecting. When Maria arrived at the base later that morning, a black SUV waited by the gate. Two men in plain uniforms stepped out, their expressions neutral but official. Captain Lawson. She nodded slowly. Ma'am, we've been asked to escort you to HQ. Admiral Stone requested your presence. Lucas was already at school. She didn't have time to tell him why she wasn't coming home early today. The drive to the regional command center was silent. The men didn't speak, and she didn't ask. Outside, the world blurred: sand, water, fences. She had been in vehicles like this before, back when silence meant survival. Inside HQ, Stone waited. Grant too. The room was cold, polished steel and humming fluorescent light. Maria, Stone said, her tone gentle but edged. You're not in trouble, but the department wants to know what's true and what is. Maria folded her hands. Everything they said is true. I was Iron Sparrow. I did what I had to do. A thin man in a gray suit, a civilian liaison, looked unimpressed. And you concealed your identity for over a decade. Why? She met his eyes. Because I was tired of people dying for names. The man blinked, thrown off balance. Names. Names, titles, badges, she said. They don't save lives, people do. Grant looked down, shame flickering briefly across his face. Stone didn't move. The liaison cleared his throat. Be that as it may, Captain Lawson, the situation has complicated national messaging. The department would prefer if you refrained from further public appearances. Maria smiled faintly. That won't be a problem. I didn't ask for the first one. When she left the room, the men stayed behind in uneasy silence. Grant finally spoke. You hear that? She didn't even defend herself, just accepted it. Stone's gaze stayed on the door Maria had just walked through. That's what happens when someone's already made peace, she said. You can't threaten what's free. That evening the story broke again, this time on major networks. Clips of the ceremony, shaky footage of the salute, blurred images from the recovered mission file. The world knew now. And the world had opinions. Some called her a hero. Others said she disobeyed orders. Some said she was a ghost of the military's shame. And a few whispered she should have stayed forgotten. Maria didn't respond. She stopped turning on the TV altogether. But the peace she had built began to crack under the weight of attention. One night, as rain whispered against the window, the phone rang. She almost didn't answer. It was an unlisted number, the kind that never brought good news. When she did, the voice on the other end made her go still. Captain Lawson. She knew that voice. Who is this? A pause, then quiet and steady. This is Lieutenant Cruz, 44th Marine Recon, Somalia. You pulled me out of that ditch 15 years ago. Her throat tightened. Cruz, you made it home. Yeah, thanks to you. His voice was rough. Ma'am, I saw the news. I just wanted to say I never forgot your voice. You told me to keep breathing, I did. Maria closed her eyes, hand trembling against the phone. I'm glad, she whispered. Thing is, Cruz continued, I'm with a rescue coordination unit now. There's something you should know. There's chatter, one of your old units went dark during recon off the Horn of Africa. They used your call sign as a distress ping. Sparrow down. Maria froze. The room seemed to tilt. That doesn't make sense, she said finally. That call sign was deactivated. That's why I'm calling, Cruz said. Someone resurrected it, someone who knew your code. Maria stared at the rain outside, her mind suddenly alive again with patterns, instincts, calculations she thought she'd buried. Who's leading the response? Joint Command, but they're stalling, politics, territory issues, you know the drill. Send me everything you have, she said quietly. Ma'am, you're not. Send it, her tone was calm, final. When she hung up, her reflection stared back from the window, not the janitor, not the mother, but the soldier. And for the first time in years, she saw the Iron Sparrow again. An hour later she sat at the kitchen table, files spread out, maps open, old instincts whispering. Lucas slept in his room, unaware that his mother's past had just found her again. The soft hum of rain mixed with the rustle of paper, coordinates, radio codes, mission grids. Then quietly the front door opened. Admiral Stone stepped in, holding 2 coffees. You called Cruz? She asked. Maria looked up. He called me. Stone placed the cup beside her. I figured, I got the same alert, that distress signal's real. Maria's eyes narrowed. Then we don't wait. Maria, Stone said gently, you're a civilian now. Maria stood. No, I'm still a soldier, and someone out there used my name. That means they're either in trouble or they're trying to send me a message. Stone studied her for a long moment, then she nodded. Then we go together. Maria exhaled, steadying herself. The room was filled with quiet thunder, the air charged with the familiar scent of purpose. Outside, the storm was gathering again, wind bending the palm trees, waves battering the rocks. Maria Lawson, the woman who had fought to stay invisible, now stood at the edge of being called back into a world she thought she'd left behind. And somewhere in the dark seas, half a world away, someone whispered into a broken radio. Iron Sparrow, if you can hear this, we need you. She looked out the window, her reflection fatting against the storm. Then she whispered back, you will. How far would you go to answer a call you thought you buried? The rain had stopped by dawn, but the base still smelled of storm, metal, salt, and something like memory. Maria Lawson stood at the edge of the dock, the waves slapping against the hulls of anchored boats. The rising sun painted everything in bruised gold. Her duffel bag hung from one shoulder. It wasn't heavy, not compared to what she'd carried before, but every ounce of fabric, every sound of the zipper pulled her backward through time. Behind her, Admiral Stone approached, her boots echoing on wet concrete. She carried a small case of her own, marked only with her initials. You sure about this? Stone asked, though she already knew the answer. Maria didn't look back. You ever seen a distress call using your name and ignored it? Stone gave a faint, rueful smile. No, and I guess that's why we're both here. They boarded the small Navy transport craft under pretext, inspection duty. No one questioned it. Rank still carried weight and silence carried more. As the engines rumbled to life, Maria gripped the railing, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The world she'd built, the peace, the stillness, the quiet life with Lucas, grew smaller with every passing wave. Lucas does know? Stone asked. Maria shook her head. He thinks I'm helping Admiral Stone fix base records. Stone nodded slowly, and when he finds out. Maria's jaw tightened. He'll understand one day. The sea stretched ahead, endless, silver blue, and indifferent. The hum of the engines blended with the sound of her own heartbeat. For hours they said little. Two soldiers, one ghost returning to her grave. At last the clouds ahead began to gather. The horizon darkened. Stone studied the radar screen. Coordinates match cruise's intel. Sector 44K no comm since last transmission. Maria leaned over the console. No air support. Stone shook her head. Command didn't authorize the op. We're ghosts, remember. Maria smirked faintly. Feels like old times. The storm hit fast, sheets of rain slashing across the deck, waves crashing hard enough to tilt the vessel. Maria held the railing, her body remembering how to move with chaos instead of against it. It wasn't fear she felt, it was clarity. In war, she'd learned that fear and focus are twins. The trick was knowing which one to feed. Hours later, as night fell over the Indian Ocean, they found it, or what was left of it. A lifeboat half-capsized. Flares burned low and dying, a faint orange glow struggling against the darkness. Maria shouted over the storm, "Bring us closer." The crew maneuvered the vessel until the debris came into view, shrapnel, supply cases, and the stenciled remains of an insignia, 44th Recon Support. Stone's breath caught. That's Cruz's unit. Maria's eyes swept the wreckage. Then she saw it, a faint glimmer of reflection through the rain. Movement. Over there. They launched a rescue raft. Maria was first in the water, the cold slicing into her like knives. She reached the overturned craft and pulled herself up, gripping the edge. A figure clung to the side, a man, barely conscious, soaked in fuel and blood. His voice rasped through the wind. "Ma'am, Iron Sparrow." Her stomach turned to ice. Who sent that signal? He coughed, spitting seawater. Wasn't me. Found it looping on the comms, automated beacon. Beacon, she repeated. He nodded weakly, said, "Final Sparrow directive, return." Maria's blood ran cold. She hauled him onto the raft, Stone steadying the line. When they reached the transport vessel, the crew lifted the Marine aboard, laying him under a tarp. He was hypothermic but alive. Stone crouched beside him. "We'll get you home, son." The Marine grabbed her sleeve. "Home, gone," he murmured. "They bombed our position before evac. Only one signal stayed online, your call sign." Then he went limp. Stone checked his pulse. Alive barely. Maria stood over him, her face hardening. That beacon wasn't random. Stone met her gaze. Then who sent it? Maria's eyes lifted toward the black water. Someone who knew Iron Sparrow still listens. Back on deck, lightning split the sky open, white fire across endless dark. Rain pounded her face. The world around her blurred into memory. Her last mission, her lost team. The radio static that haunted her sleep. For a moment, she wasn't on a rescue ship anymore. She was back there, pinned under fire, her co gone, the team falling apart, and that same voice in her ear. "Don't stop, keep moving, you're the Sparrow now." That was the last order Blake ever gave her before the blast took him. Now, all these years later, his words echoed through the storm like they'd never stopped. "Maria," Stone's voice cut through the memory, "talk to me." She blinked, grounding herself. "It's not Cruz's op. Someone's using the past to draw me out." Stone frowned. "Why?" Maria looked toward the dark horizon. "Because someone, not done with Iron Sparrow yet." They made radio contact with a nearby hospital ship, transferring the survivor. Then, instead of turning back, Maria gave the next order quietly. "Head south, toward the old conflict zone." The crew hesitated, uncertain, but Stone spoke before anyone could question it. "You heard her, set course." For hours, the ocean stretched silent and black. The storm began to ease, leaving only low thunder rumbling in the distance. Stone sat across from her in the cabin, nursing a cup of instant coffee. "You know," she said softly, When I was younger, I used to think bravery meant going where no one else would. Turns out, it's staying when you're needed, even when no one claps for it. Maria smiled faintly. Guess we both learned that the hard way. Stone leaned forward. You don't have to prove anything, Maria. Whoever's sending those signals, it's not your responsibility anymore. Maria's eyes stayed on the dark sea through the window. Maybe not, but if it's connected to Tidal Spear, then I owe it to them to finish it. I walked away once. I won't do it again. The engines hummed low. The only light came from the soft green glow of the instruments. Stone watched her, the quiet control, the unshakable calm. You ever get tired of being the strong one? She asked. Maria chuckled softly. Every day. Silence fell between them, the kind that doesn't need filling. Then the radio crackled. Faint, distorted. Sparrow, if you hear this, do not return trap. Repeat, do not. The transmission cut off. Stone stared at the radio. That was live. Maria's hand tightened on the table. Then we're close. By dawn, the storm had cleared. The horizon was glass smooth again, too calm, too quiet. Maria stood at the bow, scanning the water. Her gut twisted. Something was wrong. Then she saw it, a flicker beneath the surface. Metal, shattered hull, a downed recon drone drifting near a rocky outcrop. They lowered a sub-camera. The image came up grainy but clear enough to see the markings. Unit 9, BLACKWING Division. Stone stiffened. Blackwing, not ours. No, Maria said quietly. They're private, contracted covert ops mercenaries. Stone's jaw tightened. Then this wasn't a distress signal, it was bait. Maria nodded. They used the Iron Sparrow code to lure us in. As the realization sank in, the radar beeped softly. Multiple contacts. Fast approaching. Stone's eyes met hers. They're here. Maria reached for her sidearm, the motion smooth, practiced, terrifyingly familiar. Then we finish what they started. The first boat appeared over the horizon, sleek, black, unmarked. Then another, and another. Within minutes, they were surrounded. Stone turned to her crew. Cut engines, stand by. A voice came over loudspeaker, filtered and cold. Identify yourselves. Stone replied, U.S. Navy Command Vessel Inspection Detail. You're in restricted waters. Static, then the voice again. Correction, you are. A spotlight flared, blinding them. Maria raised her hand against the glare. The shape of the lead vessel loomed closer, black steel, no flags, no insignia. But she recognized the pattern of its hull plating. Blackwing, former U.S. prototypes, now sold, privatized, repurposed for whoever paid most. And then a voice she hadn't heard in years, cutting through the speaker like a blade. Well, well, the Sparrow finally comes home. Maria froze, her blood ran cold. She knew that voice. Commander Blake, she whispered. Stone's head snapped toward her. You said he was dead. Maria's chest tightened. He was. The radio hissed with faint laughter. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, Blake said. You left me there, Sparrow. You walked away. Maria's knuckles went white against the railing. You gave the order to retreat. Not to abandon me, he snapped. You left me to die, and now you'll see what I became. The radio cut off. Stone looked at her, shock and disbelief in her eyes. Maria. Maria's face was stone, her voice barely above a whisper. It's him. Outside, the Blackwing ships closed in, engines roaring, weapons gleaming in the dawn. Maria's past, alive again and coming straight for her. The sea was too calm for what was coming. The horizon shimmered silver and still, the kind of stillness that comes before something breaks. Maria Lawson stood at the bow of her ship, rain still dripping from her jacket, her reflection trembling in the slick deck beneath her boots. Across the water, 3 black vessels formed a half circle, closing in, silent, deliberate. Her past was here, alive, armed, and it knew her name. Maria, Admiral Stone said softly behind her. If that's really Blake. Maria's eyes didn't leave the horizon. Then he's not the man we buried. A crackle on the comms, the same voice colder now. You stole my command, Sparrow. You took my team, my mission, my legacy. Your legacy, Maria replied, calm but sharp. They died following your orders. I made sure some lived. Lived, he snapped. You call running living. Surviving, she corrected quietly. Someone had to. A beat of static, then laughter low, bitter. Still righteous, still pretending survival is honor. You could have been the perfect soldier, Maria, but you traded war for mops and silence. She exhaled slowly. You're right, she said. I did. And for the first time, he hesitated. Admiral Stone leaned in. Maria, he's provoking you. Don't let him pull you back into the past. But Maria was already walking toward the radio panel. She pressed the comms key, her voice steady, measured. Blake, listen to me. Whatever you think I did, it wasn't betrayal. We thought you were dead. We heard the explosion. We searched. Silence, then a single, ragged breath over the channel. You didn't search long enough. Because command called evac, Maria said. You trained me to follow orders. That's what I did. Another pause. Then quietly, I waited, Maria. I waited for 3 days, and when they came back, they weren't ours. They were Blackwing. They took me in, gave me a reason to live. Stone's eyes widened. They recruited him. Maria's voice dropped to a whisper. They turned you into a ghost. Into what you made me, Blake spat. A forgotten name, a shadow, Iron Sparrow, that was my creation, remember. But the world forgot the man who forged her. Maria's hands trembled, but her voice didn't. You think revenge will fix that? I don't want revenge, he said darkly. I want acknowledgement. She took a step closer to the speaker. Then hear this, I never forgot you. Every name I spoke to the wall, every night I heard the gunfire again, you were there. You're the reason I quit fighting, because I couldn't save everyone, not even you. The calm went quiet. The kind of quiet that meant the heart of the storm was here. Then his voice returned, softer. You sound tired, Sparrow. I am, she said. You should be too. A long pause. Then almost gently he said, I can't be, not until this ends. Engines roared. The Blackwing vessels began to advance, forming a tightening circle around their smaller ship. Stone turned to her crew. Battle stations, defensive posture only, no lethal fire. Maria grabbed her headset. You want it to end, Blake, fine, but not with guns. He laughed again, bitter, hollow. You always did think you could talk your way through war. No, she said softly. I just learned you can't kill what's already broken. Her ship shook as a warning shot hit the water, close, deliberate. Metal shrapnel sprayed across the deck. One of Stone's crew ducked behind cover. Maria, Stone shouted, we can't hold this line. Maria stepped forward, unarmed, toward the railing, arms out, palms open. The rain picked up again, driven sideways by the wind. Blake, she shouted into the storm, you want your legacy, it's right here. You built soldiers who refused to give up. I'm one of them. You taught me that war isn't about medals, it's about meaning. You gave me that, don't destroy it now. The loudspeakers stayed silent. The only sound was the sea and her voice echoing across it. Then faintly she heard him. You left me to die, Maria. She lowered her arms slowly. Then let me make it right. Stone's eyes widened. What are you doing? Maria turned to her. He won't stop until someone faces him. I started this. I'll end it. Before Stone could argue, Maria grabbed a life harness, clipped in, and lowered the smaller rescue craft. Maria, Stone shouted over the wind. But she was already gone, steering the small craft across the waves toward the black hull looming ahead. The closer she got, the larger it became, monstrous, armored, faceless, a floating shadow of everything she used to fight. Her radio crackled again. You really think you can fix the past? She replied, no, but I can stop it from repeating." The Blackwing ship lowered a cargo ramp. Against every instinct, she drove straight toward it. Two armed guards stood waiting. She lifted her hands as she stepped off the raft. One of them moved aside, and there he was. Commander R. Blake. Older now, weathered, the beard streaked gray, his face lined by years of bitterness, but his eyes still the same steel blue she remembered. "You look smaller," he said quietly. "You look tired," she replied. They stood in silence, the storm swirling around them, their uniforms soaked. "You really became Iron Sparrow," he said. "The stories are true." "They were your stories first," she said. He gave a hollow smile. "Not anymore. The world doesn't want men like me, just symbols they can pity." Maria took a step closer. "That's not true. You're still the man who led us through hell." "No," he said, shaking his head. "That man died in the desert. You left him there." "You told me to leave," she whispered. He froze. She continued, voice trembling. "You said, if it's between me and the mission, you finish the mission. I never forgot that. I followed your last order." For the first time, his gaze faltered. His breath caught memory clawing at certainty. He started, but the words died. Maria stepped closer. "You survived, and I'm glad. But if you're here to prove I was wrong, you don't need to. I already know I was. Every day I lived in silence, I carried that." He looked away, his jaw trembling. "They told me you forgot me." She shook her head. "Never." The rain softened. The wind quieted like the sea itself was listening. Then quietly, she said the words that ended wars better than any weapon ever could. "I forgive you, Commander." He looked at her like he'd been shot. "Forgive," he repeated, "after everything." "Yes," she said simply, "because someone has to stop fighting." Silence, long, fragile, the kind that breaks men open. Finally, he dropped his weapon. It clattered against the deck. His shoulders sagged, the tension of 15 years bleeding out in one exhale. "I waited so long to hate you," he said softly, "but it never felt right." Maria reached out and took his hand. For a moment, they were just two soldiers again, not ghosts, not myths, not enemies, just people who had survived too much. Outside, Stone's ship drifted closer. The loudspeakers echoed her voice. "Maria, report." Maria raised her radio. "It's over." On the Blackwing deck, Blake looked up at the sound. "You think they'll let me walk away from this?" Maria smiled faintly. "I don't think they have a choice." He nodded once, resigned. "You always were the better soldier." "No," she said softly, "just the one who stopped fighting first." When they returned to Coronado, the sky was clear again. The sea calm, blue, infinite. Blake was taken into custody quietly, no spectacle, no headlines. Admiral Stone handled the report herself, her voice steady, protective. "Unofficial humanitarian rescue," she told the council. "No combat engagement. Situation resolved." They didn't ask questions. Sometimes the truth doesn't fit neatly in a file. That night, as the sun melted into the Pacific, Maria stood alone on the seawall, watching the light fade. The wind carried the faint sound of jets overhead, distant, fatting, like ghosts heading home. She thought of Blake, of her team, of all the names on the memorial wall, and of the boy she'd left sleeping safely at home, the one who'd given her reason to finally lay her armor down. She smiled faintly. The sea shimmered gold, the tide whispering softly against the rocks. A voice behind her broke the quiet. "You always come here at sunset." She turned, Admiral Stone, 2 coffees in hand as always. "Only when I need to remember why I'm still breathing," Maria said. Stone handed her a cup. "You think he'll make peace with it?" Maria looked toward the horizon. He already did. He just didn't know how to stop fighting until someone showed him. Stone smiled. "You're good at that." Maria sipped her coffee. "At what?" "Teaching soldiers how to live." They stood there in silence. the last light sinking behind them. After a while, Maria spoke softly. "You know what Blake used to say after every mission? Some victories are too quiet for medals." Stone nodded. He was right. Maria looked down at her reflection rippling in the water. Maybe that's the only kind worth having. The waves lapped softly against the rocks. Somewhere nearby, the flag flapped lazily in the breeze. And for a moment, everything, the war, the noise, the ghosts, went still. Maria Lawson closed her eyes, breathing in the salt air, the quiet hum of peace she'd fought her whole life to earn. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And sometimes, the loudest heroes are the ones who never ask to be seen, only to be remembered right.